Hello, my astrology family. This is Lada from Astrolada.com. This is the most important and exciting month of the year, not just personally, but for the world, because the two planets, the two probably most intense planets, Saturn and Pluto, are changing signs in March. So there will be big world important events that you'll notice around March, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after. But on a personal level, this will be a game changer, many new beginnings in your life. Old problems will disappear and new exciting territories and problems will appear. Let's see what it's going to be like. I'll speak about each of the 12 signs. You'll come back to this video for many years, at least for the next 3 years, because I'll speak about how Saturn will influence you for the next 3 years and Pluto for the next 20 years. So please save this video to favorites because you will need it. When things start happening, this will explain to you and give you perspective, so you don't feel overwhelmed, or so you feel like, wow, I'm on time, like a deja vu. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So this is an important video. And before I start, please do start with your ascendant. If you know your time of birth, start with your rising sign, also known as ascendant. If you don't know it, start with your sun sign and moon sign if you can, but the ascendant is the most important, I think, if your time of birth is correct, and then I'll follow if you're day born, the sun. Check the three if you want, but always for me the ascendant is it. And by the way, before we start, just to let you know, I'm doing a big webinar on Pluto in Aquarius. That will be at the end of February, the start of March. It's only $39. It will be 5 hours, and I'll walk you through how Pluto will affect you personally, because Pluto will be in Aquarius for the next 20 years, and I'll show you how, and you'll be able to see what areas Pluto will influence. Say Pluto will square your Mars, natal Mars, in 2036. What does it mean? Or Pluto will enter your second house and it will transit the second house cusp in 2025. What does it mean for you? Or Pluto will trine your Venus. What does it mean for your life, for your love life, and which year? So that will be a very personal webinar, but because I'll show you how you can calculate it and see it very easy, but at the same time very insightful for you to plan, because Pluto is the planet of the evolution of the soul, and if all the most important changes on a spiritual and material level always happen through Pluto. So let's enjoy the videos. Your rising sun or moon, March 2023, but this video, as I said, is much more more than just March. The first important event that's happening in March, but that will influence you till 2025-26, is that Saturn is changing its sign. For the last 2.5-3 years, Saturn has been in your 7th house, cleaning up their relationships and restructuring, reorganizing this part of your life. And if you want to see how well you did during Saturn transiting for the last 3 years since 2020, your 7th house, watch the next sign, watch Virgo, because I speak there how Saturn affects us in the 7th house, and you can listen to that and look back and say, wow, this really happened to me, you know, and what the lessons were and how you matured because of that, even if you feel like it was tough times, or and you can see what the purpose behind all of this was. But now Saturn from March the 7th for the next 2-3 years will move into your 8th house, and Saturn in the 8th house, what is it going to request from you for the next 2-3 years? Well, on the more material side, Saturn 8th house is one of the financial houses because it directly opposes also the 2nd house of finances, and it rules other people's finances. It might be our spouse's finances, our business partner's finances, any kind of mortgage payments we might have, any kind of finances that are involved with banks or with others, or us receiving money from another source, from governments or loans of any sort. So Saturn will ask you to be very deliberate and very more mature in regards to all such kind of matters. And sometimes to do this, Saturn can initially, especially the first year of its transit, can restrict us a lot in that area. For example, our partners, your partner's finances can feel like it's restricted. Your partner might have to take a step back financially to reorganize, or some help that we're receiving from outside, or something connected to a loan or to inheritance can be delayed or can be more complicated of some sort. Or if you are having to pay off certain mortgages, there might be something there that feels like more pressure on you, that feels like it's more demanding. And the purpose of all those events, and no matter how they manifest through your partner's finances or loans and so on, or delays of inheritance, or some issue with insurances that you have to deal with, and also taxes. Eighth house rules the taxes, the money that we owe to the government, which is a bit criminal, to be honest. I know people say, oh yeah, but how will others live in the schools and the roads? No, it's not coming from your taxes, guys. It's coming actually from the taxes that you pay on your property, but it's not coming from your income tax. Income tax goes all to pay off the debt of the country and for the military. So anyway, going back to Saturn in the 8th house. So what is the purpose of all those things? If they happen, if there is such kind of initial restriction, especially at the beginning of the period for a year, and maybe from March already, you might notice the beginning of this. Or you might have to deal with some complicated situation involving you and another person's money. But the ultimate goal is that you become more conscious about shared resources, and you become more, maybe you rebudget, maybe you replan with your partner, maybe you're doing some long-term investment with your partner, buying property or buying something else, like saving for an education or for your children's degrees. Or so that's why you need to tighten up the belt collectively together as a family. But the ultimate goal is actually on a very spiritual level to re-examine how you give and receive. What do you believe you're worthy and others are worthy? And to re-examine, especially if you're in a situation that is unfair, where one gives or receives more, and it's not always money. It can be emotional support, it can be contributing to a project, it can be sexual sharing. 8th house is one of the houses of sex as well. Do you give too much or do you give too little? So such topics will be raised during those 2-3 years. So they can be addressed. It doesn't mean they'll develop negatively necessarily. It will mean they require more. They'll slow down. There might be some delays, or obstacles. So this attracts your attention to that area of your life, so you can really examine deeper. Maybe you have to communicate with your partner or with other people in your life where there is give and take situations. It can be with children, it can be with business partners, it can be with colleagues. And the themes of how much I give and how much you give. As I said, it might be with work, it might be with emotions, with emotional support, with feelings, or with assets and finances. So in this process, though, sometimes what can appear is a power struggle, because power struggles are always about resources. As you know, all wars, this is also the house of wars in astrology, one of the houses. So all wars and power struggles start because someone wants more resources than the other. Someone abuses power. This is the other theme of the 8th house. Power. How do you work with it? Have you given away your power, or do you take someone's power? Do you overpower someone? Maybe you're a bit despotic as a parent. Maybe you're a bit despotic in your relationship, or maybe your partner, or maybe someone in your environment takes your power away and is a bit despotic. So you have to address those issues. If you're in the role of the one that is the victim, or who is being taken advantage of and overpowered, you might feel at moments this kind of extreme anger. It's not going to be constant for 2-3 years, but which pushes you to take back your power in some way, to address it in some way, to end suddenly situations where you feel it's toxic. Toxic situation is where one is using the other. And so you see the themes and the topics can feel a bit painful. This is an emotional house. The eighth house is the house of the astral, feelings, subconscious. So you really have to examine your deep motivations. And if you're in the role of the one that takes advantage of others, or kind of overuses their power in some way, it might be that you use a sexual power to gain something from others. You might use your power of the mind to kind of threaten or to subtly manipulate. And such topics become, especially if you're inclined to such behaviors, so to be the victim of such behaviors becomes very prominent for a few years. The things that really scare you as well, the things that you consider like your own inner demons, or things that you have compulsion over or obsession, they can become very present to you as well. So you can deal with such matters. So again, this is one period when some people can deal with addictions. They can deal with anything that has more power over them. It doesn't always have to be a person over them than they have over it. And the ultimate goal is to kind of organize the astral body, which is the feelings body. The eighth house is where we keep traumas as well. So Saturn there might return traumas from the past that we become aware. Maybe someone in high school hurt you. Maybe something your parents said, or when you were growing up. Something that starts repeating as similar experiences around you until you notice that it's kind of a repeat of a similar situation which happened when you were younger. But when young, we feel powerless many times. We don't know how to process feelings, how to understand them. Many times we don't have the physical strength to respond to an abusive parent or something, or teacher. So when Saturn transits the eighth house, Saturn is the planet of repetition, some kind of a possible traumatic events or experiences that you couldn't process as young can repeat now in your more adult years, and you have to, it's a good idea if you work with a psychologist or whatever, they'll help you recognize a repetition of what situation it is in your earlier life, or you might be able to recognize it on your own, because you would find yourself triggered more than normal at certain events, which for others would be like, what's the big deal? Why are you reacting like that? But these are psychological complexes in the eighth house that Saturn is triggering, that the point of them is to take a deep look at them, to organize them, and to reframe them in your mind. Saturn has this ability to make something more elegant, more simple, to reframe, and to help you detach from emotionally. Because many times we're so emotionally entangled with something, and something that has happened very long time ago even, that we're not aware of, that we react very extremes to similar situations which other people not react the same way to. And Saturn will really help us. You might work with a psychologist, or you might just work by exploring disciplines like astrology, or if you're naturally more self-introverted, you'll notice those themes. You might have a natural yourself to become aware of that, how you're repeating something, and then, or maybe even go back to the past and say, okay, my mom was my sibling was very abusive, they put me down, and so on. And Saturn transiting there will help you. It's painful in a long process. It might take 2-3 years. It might take repeated efforts. Work with the professionals. Saturn rules professionals, people with more experiences, or you, if you can become more introspective in your own authority figure and look through those processes. But the ultimate result will be that you'll be able to see from this what happened in the past. You'd be able to reframe it somehow and maybe understand, well, my mom and my sibling, they did the best they could, or they had their own issues and whatever, and you see it in a different light. And this way you distance yourself emotionally, so you're not so reactive. So the final goal of this transit can be, really, when it finishes in 25, 26, you might feel so emotionally lighter than normal. But during that period, it can feel a bit heavier emotionally. And the thing is, it's a very internal process. Externally, your life might be going quite well. No one might notice how you're battling your own inner demons, or how you are not battling, but trying to control them. Saturn is not about outright battle. Saturn is more like planning, controlling, keeping in order and detaching. So you'd hopefully be able to detach psychologically, emotionally from certain pains and in your psychological body. But Saturn can slow down the possibility for sudden transformations in your life, of your personality or psychological. It is a slow process. So just warning, sudden miraculous healings as well. This is the 8th house, can be a bit not so possible because it's Saturn, it's a blocking influence. So especially if you're working on spiritual awakening, experiencing astral travel, out of body, because the 8th house is one of those gates, because it rules the chakras, the audio purchase, visible and invisible openings in the body and the chakras. And Saturn can slow down kind of the spinning of the chakras. So if you're trying to have, let's say, spiritual or kind of astral travel and so on, healing work of any sort, energy work, it will be a slow going process. I have a Cancer friend who's just went through Saturn in her 8th house for the last 3 years, and she's been very like going to 10-hour meditations and so on, meditating every day 2-3 hours, and she says it's such a slow going process. I'm not having any progress. It's like, and I told her, when Saturn moves out of your 8th house, you'll see all this hard work you did, it will start giving results. You will not even have to go into meditation. You will be staying there and you'll be entering those states of higher consciousness that you had only glimpses of. But okay, that's for people that are only interested in that. Okay, so with Saturn, the 8th house is also taxes, so you have to be more deliberate with your taxes. You have to be more careful, more, follow the order. Saturn wants you to keep promises, to do things lawfully, to restructure, to reorganize, maybe to streamline, to make more simple, or to make maybe change tax of people, or maybe even learn to do your own taxes, learn to cut off corners somehow. There are a lot of other things that the 8th house is connected with, but I don't want to bore you. I don't want to make this video too long. You can check it out in my 2023 video horoscopes for the signs. If you're Leo, I speak way more in depth about Saturn in the 8th house and what it wants and what it will help you achieve in the long term. And it's only $21. There is a link below in the description if you're interested. It's 3-hour video for each sign. Then the other big event this month is that Pluto is going to enter your 7th house, Leos. And that's going to happen from the 23rd of March to June, so only for 2 months. But it's very important time, because the next 2-3 months, watch for insights, because always the ingress, the passing of a planet like Pluto in another sign, which will stay there for 20 years till 2044 almost, can bring some symbolic events that will give you a hint about what's to come and the major themes of Pluto in the 7th house. Well, you'll know that Saturn has been in your 7th house for the last 2-3 years. It's almost like it's just prepared the ground for Pluto to do the really deep work here in your 7th house. But it's not going to happen in one day. It's a 20-year transit. Depends where your sun, moon, or ascendant is in Leo. The later born Leos, if you're 25 degrees, you might feel this Pluto in your 7th house most intensely, and the most important events might happen in 2039 or something towards the end. But you'll find out when exactly it will happen if you join me on my webinar for Pluto in Aquarius, which will be 5-6 hours. I'll give you all the years, and you'll check your degree, and you'll know exactly which degree, when, which year it will happen, and I'll give the explanation to all possible influences of Pluto, and you'll know what to expect around that time. So you're prepared for the next 20 years. But let's say that the most major theme, and why is Pluto influence in a house so important? Because Pluto is the last planet, and as the last planet, it rules the evolution of the soul. So whatever other transits are happening in your life for the next 20 years, they would all be serving the mission of Pluto, because the biggest mission always for everyone is the evolution of the soul. And if you want to have an inkling where spirit or your higher self wants to take you, and what's the most important area that all other events will somehow filter through this, it's Pluto in transit. So for you, this focus for the next 20 years will be really big transformation of your relationships. So very powerful people can start appearing in your life over the next 20 years. I would say even if you're later degrees Leos, you'll start noticing it already, but the peak will be when Pluto exactly opposes your Sun, Moon, or Ascendant in Leo. But you'll start noticing that the people that are entering your life are way more Plutonian. They might be more Scorpios, they might be more powerful, they might be people that are people with more worldly power, or more psychological power, psychic power of some sort. And you have to be, of course, very careful what kind of people you bring in, because there might be people that try to take advantage of you. Again, Pluto is the same energy as the 8th house, which Saturn already will be working for you for 2-3 years, but Pluto now enters your 7th house of relationships. So it's kind of a bit of a double whammy energy here. So you have to learn to discriminate between people that are predators and people that are there for your good, people that you become over the next 20 years something like a expert on recognizing who to trust and who not to trust, and you become something like a psychology expert on, you kind of become like a human barometer or x-ray what the motivations of others around you. Again, I've been observing Cancer friends of mine with Cancer rising or Cancer sun or moon who've had Pluto in their 7th house over the last 14-15 years, and almost all of them met some very powerful relationship, became a big focus for them. They met some really transformational relationships, partners that changed their lives, partners that in some extreme cases there were maybe some kind of abusive relationships that would happen as well, just to wake them up to take their power. And the people that will be doing and what will be awake, Pluto is all about empowerment of the soul and yourself. Well, others will be the trigger. Either they would cross your boundaries, so you can learn to take back your power, you can learn to recognize unhealthy limits, and when someone is too invasive or too predatory towards you, or if you're the one doing this to others, people will disappear from your life, people will leave as well. So if there was some unequal balance of power, you'll become more and more aware of that. And if you've been manipulating others, sometimes we all do it, we manipulate others towards our goals. Well, you'll be asked to confront those themes for 20 years ahead. So you can become like a more purified in regards to your relationships, because Pluto is always the planet of purification, and 7th house is how we are with others. So not only purified, but it's not about innocence, it's about awakening to the right use of power between you and another person. But this can entail abuse of power of some sorts, where there's some power struggles with others. Again, we come to this topic, and some exchanges between two people that you need to balance in some way. But just to tell you, a lot of Cancers that pass through that, like my brother, when Pluto exactly opposed his Ascendant in the 7th house, his wife left him. Maybe he was not giving her enough attention, whatever. He had like a crisis breakdown. But within the same year and a half, he met the love of his life, where it's way more equal relationship. And they've been learning over the next 10 years since they've been together about the power, how to give the right power to each other rather than, one-sided. But also Pluto can bring you very intense sexual attractions when it's in the 7th house. I mean, it can raise the Kundalini. I've seen it in many Cancers, Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising over the last few years. Especially for the rising is very important, we're talking. And but I've seen it that some powerful chemical, almost like alchemical relationships appears. They attract partners that fully change them. The very sexual relationships that come, but there might be experiences through these relationships about loyalty, about betrayal, because Pluto deals with those topics, about manipulation and so on. But then again, don't freak out. There's so many Cancers that are still married, or they're in happy relationships that have gone through that. They just had a period of a couple of years when the aspect is exact, that it really intensified, and they addressed those topics. Like my friend who, when Pluto opposed her Sun, she's always been very jealous and kind of spying on her, trying to read the phones of boyfriends and partners. And when Pluto happened to her, it really intensified to the level of obsession, to the level of extreme. And she had to, she almost had like a mental breakdown. And of course, when you search for something, you'd always find something that is not fully. So that's when she suddenly realized she cannot carry on like that, and she's no longer been like that. So she no longer has this it's like she says, even if the phone is there, I'm not gonna look. I don't want to know. I don't want to invade people's privacy. So you're learning such kind of plutonic invasive lessons. Well, if you're too invasive, to pull back a bit, because it's just gonna hurt you. Or if you're, so it depends which side of the story you are, but they're all kind of plutonic lessons. But on another level, Leos might be called to through the biggest evolution of their soul through other people that will appear. Oftentimes it's so-called soulmates. We have soulmates, twin flame. Soulmates are the one that makes us grow the most spiritually. So that will be a theme, a topic. Well, on another level, Pluto is also a mission in life. So a lot of Leos can develop some kind of their relationship status can change. So if you've been single for a long time, Pluto can change that, because Pluto is total turnaround. Or if you've been many married, or many very much in relationships all the time, Pluto can make you like, like I want a period, maybe not 20 years, maybe just for the duration of Pluto, exactly opposite your Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, where you're like, I'm stepping out of relationships, I want to be single. But it's like total transformation of that area. But on a more higher level, Pluto in the 10th, in the 7th house, and especially Pluto rules your 4th house. So a lot of your family, let's say, patterns and behavior inherited from ancestors and family will play out through your relationships, and you'll notice those things. And if you catch yourself, that's the first step towards breaking those patterns. But on another level, a lot of Leos might find themselves called to work with others on one-to-one for the next 20 years. And that will be the right direction for them. They can really transform humanity and society, because Aquarius rules humanity and society, and Pluto is to transform. And the 7th house is by work with others on one-on-one, or through some kind of a dialogue with others, through some kind of they can transform society by one step at a time, of course, through collaboration or partnership of some sort that is transformational, or work on one-on-one with another, or combine powers with another to transform somehow, to do some very important work. As long as they are aware of the subtle influences of partnerships, even though for some of you partnerships can be extremely beneficial, business or work partnerships of any sorts, and personal as well. But even in those partnerships, there will be these themes of domination and, Plutonian, subtle, that you have to be aware of. So, and power struggles. And so you have to work through that, but it can be extremely transformative and positive for many of you. Others can enter very much business-oriented spheres and transform business, because 7th house is one of the business houses. As well, it can bring fame to some of you. Pluto is extremes, and 7th house is the audience. And you might finally have the willpower to put yourself out there and transform somehow society by reaching out to others, whether it's a business where you have clients, whether it's in sales is the 7th house. 7th house is counseling, diplomacy, relationships, any kind of such spheres. You might really have deep insights about such matters. And if anything to do with working with another person and almost being like a guide to them, like a bridge of transformation for them, some of you might be called towards such fields. And of course, that can beat a bit on the ego of Leo if someone powerful comes into your life. But we need to learn to live with others. So as I said, the pivotal, the most growth spiritually will come to you through relationships, over the next 20 years. For some it might be very soon, from 2023. For others it might come a bit later. But already any kind of career or activities that you involve with another person can be, that can start from 2023, collaboration or so on, can be the way to go. I mean, the lessons might be sometimes hard there, but Pluto ultimately can really empower you and give very the other extreme of things. Okay, so then let's look specifically more towards the month. We have a big 8th house influence here. Just March, the sun is there, Mercury, so you might be dealing with matters of mutual finances, insurances, inheritances, loans, banks, and so on. You might be interested more in the occult, in matters of secrets of some sort, taxes, of course, 8th house. But there is a great conjunction that I really look forward to at the very beginning of March. It's between Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, in your 9th house. What does it mean, Leo? Actually, Leo is really protected till May, till the middle of May, because Jupiter is trining your sign, and now Venus is trining your sign till the 17th of March as well. So those things that we talked about here, 7th and 8th house, they take years to unfold. But immediately in March, there is something very good coming to you. It might be a trip for some of you, Venus conjunct Jupiter in the 9th house. It might be an opportunity to study something, to learn something. It might be like a direction that God gives you, your higher self, towards the right path in some way, a great wise counsel from a well-meaning mentor, teacher, or a normal person who appears in the role of a mentor, teacher, that gives some illumination towards you, answer to a question, helps you see into the right direction. But overall, it is going to be very positive. Anything to do, you might reach out and connect, or connect with people from distant places, different, that are not familiar to you, that are from outside of your normal circle. So that can be like foreigners, people from other towns, from different social circle, higher positions, usually higher above you, that reach out and give you a helping hand. Anything to do with higher education, anything to do with travel is very beneficial. And I think overall you're much luckier this month, much positive. You might find yourself that things align, like you're trying to find a parking space and bam, one appears, or it's like you're given answers. The 9th house is our connection to the higher self, so you're trying to figure out how to do something, and bam, you read something that gives you the right answer, or someone calls you and tells you, and like, wow, I got the answer. It can feel like synchronicity or luck, but it's like your higher self, you're immediately tapping you intuitively into the right answers of everything. So do use that beautiful energy. And Mars is the last month in this 11th house, where it stayed there for 6 months, almost 7 months. It leaves this 11th house towards the end of the month, 28 to 26 onwards. So if there were any problems connected to friends, to large groups of people, to anything connected to organizations of any sort, this all goes away, and Mars will enter your 12th house the next 2.5 months, but we'll speak about that in the April videos. So thank you so much, and yeah, very interesting times, Leo, like the soulmate Pluto, the one that people will appear that are soulmates, not just one. We can have soulmates, a part of our soul group, which can be up to 30 people, but like very important people will appear in your life starting from 2023. That will transform, they will be the catalyst. So thank you so much.